All right, we're at example 8 now. Now, example 8, we actually have two separate problems that we're going to look at, and we're actually going to look at both of them from two different perspectives. The one that I call the common sense approach, and the other with using the 3 steps. So I just want to make sure we're clear so we can kind of see the difference in what's going on. But we'll get the same answer no matter how we approach it. So as we look at this problem here, hopefully this jumps out as something weird in that we have a negative on the other side. And so if this were an equation, if this were absolute value of x plus 2 equals negative 3, then we'd say the answer is no solution. But I don't want you to jump right to that conclusion. We'll see why. That's actually not the answer to this. The answer to this problem is not no solution. So let me start with the common sense approach to this problem, and then we'll get into the 3-step. The common sense approach to this problem is going to be, like we did with the equations, to replace the absolute value with the word positive, and replace the negative number with the word negative, and then just simply ask ourselves, when are positive numbers bigger than negative numbers? Well, that's pretty easy. If 0 is here and positive numbers are over here and negative numbers are over here, positive numbers are always bigger than negative numbers. Always. So if it's always, what values of x make this true? Any value of x makes this true. So our answer to this problem is actually all real numbers. It's the interval from negative infinity to infinity that would make this original inequality true, because it's always true. Positive numbers are always bigger than negative numbers. That's the common sense approach. Now, if we went with the 3-step approach, let me go ahead and rewrite the problem real quick. Step 1 would be pretend like this is an equation. Step 2, well, actually, step 2 is plot them, so let me actually finish step 1. Step 1 is to solve it as though it's an equation. Well, absolute value equals a negative. When does a positive equal a negative? That's never. But we can't stop there. If we're going to do the 3-step process, we better do all 3 steps of the 3-step process. Step 2 is plot those solutions. Okay, sweet. I plotted them. I plotted nothing. But then step 3, figure out what gets shaded. We can figure out what gets shaded by either plugging a number in from the interval and seeing if it works or not, or by drawing the V. Now keep in mind that we have no border points that we plotted. Therefore, either the entire interval works or the entire interval doesn't work. So if I draw my V so that it crosses every time where I have a solution, which means never, then I go back to the original problem and say, when is the V above the horizontal line? Well, that would be always. The V is always above. So we do get the same answer of always, meaning negative infinity to infinity. Both ways we approach it. Obviously, the common sense approach was much easier, though. We got to the answer a lot quicker. Now, similar is going to happen if we have an absolute value less than a negative, is we, again, have two separate approaches. We can take the common sense approach, which is to say, when are positives less than negatives? And the answer there is, of course, never, which means there is no solution here. Our answer is no solution because this can never happen. We can never have a positive that's less than a negative. And if we approach this the same way with our 3-step process, where step 1 is to pretend like this is an equation and you get no solution, step 2 is that you plot no solution, and step 3 is that you figure out where this gets shaded. Well, now we're asking, when is the V below the horizontal line? And again, then, the answer is never. The V is never below the line, and therefore it's no solution. And so we can approach these in either way. I would suggest the common sense approach, that if you see an absolute value on one side, negative on the other, always use the common sense approach, whether it's an equation, whether it's a greater than inequality, or whether it's a less than inequality. Always just replace the absolute value with the word positive, replace the negative number with the word negative, and simply ask yourself the question. Do not go with the knee-jerk reaction of no solution. Because remember, if we look back at this, that wasn't no solution. That was quite the opposite. That was infinitely many solutions. It's all real numbers that worked.